Earth, Drake long ago formulated an equation that, according to him, gave us the expected number of planets in the universe with intelligent civilizations. The result was spectacular in terms of numbers. Today we know that this equation was wrong, but the deniers continue to insist that life in the universe and the planets that host it are countless. That made it easier for them to maintain that something so common did not require intelligent intervention for its origin. Today, as is often the case, scientific advances once again confirm the presence of God and discredit the deniers. The most plausible hypothesis, according to current scientific advances, is that of rare Earth. It maintains that life in the universe may not be so common, to the point that it is very likely that we are alone in the cosmos. The cosmos presents us with one of the most profound paradoxes of modern science, the Fermi paradox. This paradox encapsulates the cosmic stillness often referred to as the Great Silence. For decades, the principle of mediocrity has dominated astrobiological thinking, postulating that Earth is a typical rocky planet. However, the deafening silence of the cosmos suggests a different reality.
This study presents a rigorous argumentative defense of the rare Earth hypothesis, a direct counterproposal to the mediocrity principle. The central thesis is that the sequence of events necessary for the emergence and persistence of complex animal life is extraordinarily improbable. Earth represents a profound statistical anomaly. Far from being the norm, a planet like ours is a rarity of cosmic proportions. The argument will be constructed as a cumulative series of probabilistic filters, each drastically reducing the number of candidate worlds. The analysis will proceed from the largest scale, galactic architecture, to the smallest, the biochemistry of abiogenesis. We must consider the contingencies of evolutionary history to build a cumulative case that offers a sober and empirically grounded solution. Silence is not a mystery to be solved, but the expected outcome in a universe fundamentally hostile to complexity.
Ever wondered where we should look for aliens? It might seem like the universe is wide open, but the reality is that most of it is a cosmic death trap. The search for complex life starts not with a single star or planet, but with a galaxy-wide filter, the galactic habitable zone. Think of our galaxy not as a peaceful city, but as a sprawling metropolis with safe suburbs and a dangerously chaotic downtown. For life to get a foothold and evolve, it needs a specific address, a sweet spot that's just right. Let's start by looking at the galactic core, the bustling, high-energy downtown. It's a spectacular light show, but a terrible place to live. The sheer number of stars packed together creates gravitational chaos. Planetary orbits can get scrambled, and entire Oort clouds, those icy reservoirs at the edge of solar systems, can be disturbed, sending a relentless barrage of comets crashing into any developing worlds. It's like trying to build a house in the middle of a permanent earthquake and meteor shower. But the gravitational dangers are just the beginning. The galactic center is a radiation nightmare. At the very heart of the Milky Way lurks Sagittarius, a supermassive black hole. Even in its relatively quiet state, it spits out high-energy flares. If it ever woke up and became an active quasar, it would unleash a wave of radiation so powerful it would sterilize a huge portion of the inner galaxy. And then there are the supernovae. The inner galaxy is a stellar nursery, constantly birthing new stars. But this high rate of star formation means a high rate of star death. When massive stars go supernova, they blast their surroundings with lethal radiation, shredding ozone layers and scorching planetary surfaces. Even worse are gamma-ray bursts, cosmic death rays that can sterilize entire sectors of the galaxy. In this inner dead zone, complex life simply doesn't get the billions of years of peace and quiet it needs to evolve between extinction-level events. So, the solution is to move far away, right? Head out to the quiet, peaceful galactic suburbs. Well, not so fast. As you move away from the chaotic center, the radiation threat diminishes. But a new problem emerges. You've entered a resource desert. The building blocks of life and rocky planets are forged in the hearts of stars. These metals, as astronomers call everything heavier than hydrogen and helium, are most abundant near the galactic center and become increasingly rare the farther out you go. Without enough silicon, iron, and magnesium, you simply can't build Earth-sized rocky worlds. The outer galaxy is a vast, empty expanse where the ingredients for habitable planets are just too scarce. It's like trying to build a city without any bricks or steel, but even if a rocky planet did manage to form out there, it would face another critical shortage. The same stellar processes that create metals also create long-lived radioactive elements like uranium and thorium. These elements might sound dangerous, but for a planet, they are the secret to a long and active life. Their slow decay inside a planet's core acts like a natural nuclear reactor, providing the internal heat needed to drive plate tectonics and generate a protective magnetic field. Plate tectonics recycles nutrients and stabilizes the climate, while the magnetic field shields the atmosphere and surface from harmful solar winds. Without this internal engine, a planet becomes a cold, dead, and unprotected rock. So, where does that leave us? Trapped between a deadly, irradiated core and a sterile resource-starved outer rim. The only place where life has a fighting chance is in a narrow ring, the galactic habitable zone. It's a cosmic tightrope walk, a delicate balance between having enough raw materials to build a home, but not so much activity that your home is constantly being blown up. This zone is a precious, precarious sliver of cosmic real estate, where a planet has just enough resources and just enough time to let the grand, slow, multi-billion-year story of complex life unfold. The fact that we find ourselves in this perfect galactic neighborhood might just be one of the biggest reasons we are here to wonder about it at all.
Even within the confines of the HGZ, there are transient danger zones. A galaxy's spiral arms are regions of increased gas and dust density, conducive to active star formation. Consequently, the supernova rate is significantly higher within the spiral arms than in the intervening regions. A planetary system that frequently crosses these arms would be subject to repeated episodes of sterilizing radiation. Long-term survival, therefore, requires a galactic orbit that minimizes these crossings. The Sun has such an orbit, known as a corotation orbit, which keeps it synchronized with the rotational speed of the spiral arms, allowing it to remain in interm space relatively safe for long periods. This orbital synchrony is an additional factor of rarity, since most stars in the galaxy do not share this property. Together, these factors drastically limit the volume of the galaxy where complex life could thrive. The GHC is a narrow ring, and only star systems with random galactic orbits within this ring can be considered viable candidates. Having established that complex life must reside on the relatively quiet periphery of a giant spiral galaxy, an even stricter and often overlooked filter is introduced: the dynamics of the local galactic environment. The standard cosmological model predicts that massive galaxies, like the Milky Way, grow through a history of mergers and accretions of smaller dwarf galaxies. This history of mergers shapes a galaxy's environment and has profound implications for habitability. A comparative analysis between our Milky Way and its nearest neighbor, the Andromeda Galaxy, reveals that our galaxy is an anomaly, an unusually quiet cosmic harbor in a universe of violent interactions. The Andromeda Galaxy, which is up to twice as massive as the Milky Way, fits the hierarchical accretion model perfectly. It is a dynamically active system surrounded by a swarm of nearly 36 known satellite galaxies. Its history is marked by a major merger with another large galaxy a few billion years ago, an event that has left its satellite population in an asymmetric and disturbed state, with many of them aligned in a plane and orbiting in the same direction, a phenomenon described as strange and not fully understood. This active and chaotic environment, the product of a rich and violent merger history, is probably the norm for giant spiral galaxies. In stark contrast, the Milky Way is exceptionally quiescent. It has significantly fewer satellite galaxies than Andromeda, and its larger companions, the Magellanic Clouds, orbit at a considerably greater distance. This scarcity of nearby massive companions suggests a much more placid merger history, making our galactic neighborhood an exceptionally stable environment. Frequent interactions and mergers with dwarf galaxies, which are common in systems like Andromeda, are profoundly hostile to life in the galactic periphery, precisely the region that would otherwise be safe. First, gravitational perturbations from a passing or merging dwarf galaxy can wreak havoc on planetary systems. Gravitational tides can destabilize planetary orbits, ejecting planets from their systems or sending them spiraling toward their star. They can also disrupt the Oort clouds of star systems, triggering comet showers that results in massive sterilizing impact bombardments on the inner planets. Second, and perhaps more devastating, mergers are one of the main triggers of starburst. The compression of galactic gas during a merger triggers a burst of massive star formation. This proliferation of short-lived massive stars dramatically increases the local rate of supernovas and GRBs. In effect, a merger temporarily turns the safe galactic periphery into a sterilization zone, similar to the dangerous galactic core. Each of these starburst events resets the clock for the evolution of complex life, making it impossible for it to reach maturity. Therefore, the true galactic habitable zone is not simply a static ring of space. It must also be a temporary, stable refuge, free from these periodic merger-induced sterilization over billions of years. The periphery of most giant spiral galaxies is not a sanctuary, but a flashing death trap. The Milky Way, with its unusual history of quiet mergers and its sparse population of distant satellites, represents a rare exception. Its periphery has been a stable and protected harbor, a crucial prerequisite that is probably not met in most galaxies of its kind.
Once a safe niche has been established on a galactic scale, the next set of filters operates at the star system level. The architecture of our own solar system, which has been shown to be capable of supporting complex life, is remarkably atypical compared to the diversity of exoplanetary systems discovered to date. Both the right star and the right planetary configuration are required, and the combination of the two is rare. The right star, a Goldilocks sun. Most stars in the Milky Way are M-type red dwarfs, making up approximately 75% of the stellar population. Their extremely long lifespan, which can extend for billions of years, makes them attractive candidates at first glance. However, they present serious obstacles to habitability. Its low luminosity means that its habitable zone, the orbital region where a planet can sustain liquid water, is very close to the star. This proximity has two disastrous consequences. First, tidal locking. This would create a permanently scorched day hemisphere and a frozen night hemisphere, with extremely violent weather in the intervening twilight zone. M-dwarfs are also known for their volatility, especially in their youth. They are prone to frequent and powerful stellar flares that emit bursts of high-energy radiation and charged particles. A planet this close would be bombarded repeatedly, potentially stripping its atmosphere and boiling its oceans. In contrast, G-type stars like our Sun, which represent only about 6% of the stellar population, offer a much more favorable balance. Its lifespan of approximately 10 billion years is long enough to allow the evolution of complex life. Their habitable zone is wider and farther away, allowing the planets to maintain independent rotations and protecting them from stellar activity.
The configuration of our solar system, with small, rocky planets in the interior and gas giants in stable, nearly circular outer orbits, was long considered the standard model for the universe. However, thousands of exoplanetary systems discovered by missions like Kepler have shown that our architecture is, in fact, quite unusual and perhaps even rare. Common findings like hot Jupiters, gas giants that orbit extremely close to their star, much closer than Mercury to the Sun, would be catastrophic for life on a planet like Earth. The presence of a massive gas giant like Jupiter in a stable, nearly circular outer orbit is critical to Earth's habitability. It acts as a cosmic shield or guardian for our inner world. Jupiter's immense gravity clears the inner solar system of potentially dangerous asteroids and comets, dramatically reducing the frequency of large-scale impacts that could cause mass extinctions. Even within a stable system, the planet itself must possess rare intrinsic properties. Earth is unique for its active geological engine, fueled by plate tectonics. This geological dynamism acts as a planetary thermostat, recycling carbon and keeping Earth's climate stable for billions of years against the Sun's increasing luminosity. From celestial guardians to geological engines, the confluence of these rare attributes creates the unique environment where life can emerge and thrive. Veritas, in singularibus.
Earth's moon is anomalously large relative to its host planet, a feature not seen anywhere else in the solar system. The prevailing theory for its formation, the giant impact hypothesis, postulates a low probability collision between the proto-Earth and a Mars-sized protoplanet. Dubbed Theia about 4.5 billion years ago, this cataclysmic event launched a huge amount of material into orbit, which eventually coalesced to form the Moon. This collision had very specific tilt characteristics relative to Earth. As we've already seen, otherwise it would have either destroyed Earth or created an environment incompatible with life. We've already seen this, and there's no need to repeat it. The presence of this large moon is vital to Earth's climatic stability. The gravitational torque that the moon exerts on the Earth's equatorial bulge stabilizes the tilt of its rotational axis obliquity within a narrow range, currently between 22.1 and 24.5 degrees. This axial stability ensures predictable and relatively smooth seasons. Without the moon, gravitational perturbations from other planets, especially Jupiter, would cause Earth's obliquity to vary chaotically on geologic timescales, potentially ranging from 0 degrees, no seasons, to 85 degrees extreme seasons, with the poles pointing almost directly at the sun. Such catastrophic and violent climate changes would have made the survival of complex animal life almost impossible. On the other hand, the long-term habitability of a planet's surface requires the protection of a persistent global magnetic field. This field, generated by the convection of molten iron in Earth's outer core, creates a magnetosphere that deflects the solar wind, a stream of high-energy charged particles emanating from the sun. Without this protection, the solar wind would gradually erode the planet's atmosphere, stripping it of its volatiles and, eventually, its water. The fate of Mars serves as a sobering warning. Geological evidence suggests that Mars once had a denser atmosphere and liquid water on its surface. However, due to its smaller size, its core cooled and solidified more quickly than Earth's, causing its magnetic dynamo ceased about 4 billion years ago. Without a magnetic shield, the solar wind stripped Mars of most of its atmosphere, transforming it into the cold, arid desert we see today. The Earth's size being sufficient to maintain a molten convective core for billions of years is therefore a non-negotiable prerequisite for complex life on the surface. It is essential to note that these three factors, plate tectonics, a large moon, and a magnetic field, are not necessarily independent events. The same giant impact that formed the moon may have been the catalyst for the other two. The collision would have added an enormous amount of energy and angular momentum to Earth, keeping its core molten and spinning vigorously ideal conditions for a long-lasting magnetic dynamo. Furthermore, the impact could have ripped away the Earth's primordial crust, creating a thinner lithosphere that was more prone to fracture into plates, thus facilitating the onset of plate tectonics. If this is the case, Earth would not only have had to win 3 separate planetary lotteries, but a single, very low probability lottery that awarded all 3 prizes at once, making our planet's configuration even more improbable.
Have you ever wondered about the ultimate origin story, not just of humanity, but of life itself? How did we get from a lifeless, rocky planet to the bustling, vibrant world we see today? The scientific quest to answer this is called abiogenesis, the process of life arising from non-living matter. It's a fascinating field, but it's also filled with some of the biggest puzzles in science. Let's dive into some of the major hurdles. Imagine trying to build the most complex machine you can think of, but you have to do it blindfolded, with random parts, in the middle of a storm. That's a bit like what early Earth was facing. For life as we know it to begin, you need key ingredients, like amino acids and nucleotides, the building blocks of proteins and DNA. The famous primordial soup theory suggests these molecules formed in Earth's early oceans. The problem: the early oceans were vast. These crucial molecules would have been so diluted, it's like trying to find a single grain of sugar dissolved in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. The chances of them meeting and linking up to form anything complex were incredibly slim without some powerful, unknown mechanism to concentrate them. Then there's the RNA world hypothesis. This is a leading idea that suggests RNA, not DNA, was the original genetic material. RNA is amazing because it can store information like DNA and act as an enzyme to catalyze reactions like a protein. It's a 2-for-1 deal, but here's the catch: making RNA's building blocks, called ribonucleotides, without life already existing is extremely difficult. Scientists have struggled for decades to create them in lab conditions that mimic early Earth. For example, phosphate, a key part of RNA's backbone, tends to get locked up in minerals and isn't readily available in water. This is known as the phosphate problem. Even if you could form these building blocks, you then have to link them together into long chains, or polymers. This process, called polymerization, actually releases water. Doing this in a watery environment, like an ocean or a pond, is like trying to dry a towel underwater. It goes against the basic laws of chemistry and thermodynamics. You need energy in specific dry-wet cycles to make it happen, and maintaining such precise conditions across a chaotic, early planet is geologically tough to explain. So, from the sheer improbability of the right molecules forming and finding each other in a diluted soup, to the chemical roadblocks of building life's essential polymers, the origin of life remains a profound mystery. Scientists are exploring all sorts of creative ideas, from deep-sea hydrothermal vents to shallow volcanic ponds, looking for answers. But for now, the gap between a chemical mixture and the first living cell is a giant leap that we are still trying to understand. What do you think is the most plausible explanation for the origin of life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
The transition from simple chemistry to a living system is not just a matter of assembling the right components, but of assembling them in specific sequences that contain functional information. This is the deepest probabilistic obstacle. Fred Hoyle's tornado in a junkyard analogy, though often criticized as an oversimplification, captures the essence of the problem of generating specific complexity by pure chance. This intuitive argument has been quantified by the experimental work of biologist Douglas Axe. By systematically mutating the beta-lactamase enzyme, Axe estimated the prevalence of amino acid sequences that can fold into a stable, functional, three-dimensional structure. Their results indicate that the probability of a random sequence of 150 amino acids forming a functional fold is approximately 1 in 10 raised to the 77th power. This figure is so astronomically small that it exceeds the probabilistic resources of the entire observable universe throughout its history. Even if you count all the atoms in the universe, running experiments at the maximum speed physically possible for 14 billion years, the probability of finding a single functional protein by chance is effectively zero. The panspermia hypothesis, which suggests that life could have originated elsewhere and been transported to Earth, does not solve this fundamental problem. It merely relocates it. In fact, panspermia within our own solar system presents a paradox that reinforces the rare Earth hypothesis. Mars, due to its smaller size, cooled and became potentially habitable before Earth. Since we know that rock material is exchanged between Mars and Earth through meteorite impacts, lithopanspermia. If abiogenesis were a likely process under favorable conditions, it should have occurred first on Mars. Martian life would then have had a head start of hundreds of millions of years to colonize Earth. However, we have found no conclusive evidence of past or present life on Mars, let alone evidence that life on Earth is of Martian origin. The Martian silence acts as a failed control experiment for abiogenesis. The fact that life does not appear to have arisen and thrived in the most promising candidate in our neighborhood strongly suggests that abiogenesis is, in fact, an event of overwhelming improbability. Even if life manages to overcome the immense obstacle of abiogenesis, its progression toward multicellular complexity and, ultimately, technological intelligence is not an inevitable consequence. The view of evolution as a ladder of progress leading predictably toward more complex, cerebral forms is an anthropocentric fallacy. Instead, the history of life on Earth is marked by profound contingency, as paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould argued. His famous metaphor of rewinding the tape of life suggests that any minor alteration in past events would have led to radically different evolutionary outcomes, and that the emergence of human intelligence was historical accident, not a predetermined outcome. Several key events in Earth's history serve as contingent filters that demonstrate the non-directional nature of evolution. Filter 1. The Great Oxidation Event GEO for the first 1.5 to 2 billion years of its existence. Life on Earth was exclusively microbial and anaerobic. The atmosphere and oceans were devoid of free oxygen. The Great Oxidation Event, which began about 2.4 billion years ago, was a planetary transformation triggered by a single biological innovation: oxygenic photosynthesis in cyanobacteria. This event was, in essence, the first global pollution catastrophe. Oxygen, a toxic waste product for most anaerobic life at time, caused a mass extinction. However, this transformation was an absolute prerequisite for the evolution of complex animal life. Aerobic metabolism, which uses oxygen as an electron acceptor, is orders of magnitude more energy efficient than anaerobic metabolism. And it is this efficiency that allows for the existence of large, active, multicellular organisms. The emergence of oxygenic photosynthesis was not an inevitable outcome. It was a contingent evolutionary invention that depended on complex biochemical machinery and actions with the planet's geochemical sinks, such as dissolved iron in the oceans. Filter 2. The Cambrian explosion and the lottery of survival. The emergence of most of the major animal body plans phyla in a geologically short period known as the Cambrian explosion about 540 million years ago was not an orderly expansion of diversity. According to Gould's interpretation of the Burgess Shale fossils, this period witnessed an explosion of anatomical disparity, with the appearance of many strange and experimental body plans that have no modern descendants. This explosion was followed by a massive decimation, an extinction event that eliminated most of these phyla. Gould argued that survival in this extinction was not based on predictable adaptive superiority, but on luck. The fact that our own phylum, the chordates, survived this lottery was a historical accident. Had the tape been rewound, a different set of survivors might have resulted in an entirely different biosphere, one in which vertebrates, and therefore humans, would never have evolved. Filter 3. Mass extinctions as evolutionary reboots. The history of complex life has been repeatedly interrupted and redirected by mass extinction events. The best known is the Cretaceous-Paleogene KPG extinction event, 66 million years ago, caused by the impact of an asteroid. This event eliminated approximately 75% of the Earth's species, including all non-avian dinosaurs, which had been the dominant terrestrial vertebrates for more than 150 million years. The disappearance of the dinosaurs opened up a vast range of ecological niches that were previously occupied. It was this ecological opportunity that enabled the adaptive radiation of mammals, which until then had been mostly small, nocturnal creatures. Without this catastrophic and purely coincidental event, mammals would almost certainly not have been able to survive. Technological intelligence does not appear to be a trait of evolutionary convergence. Convergent evolution is the process by which unrelated lineages independently develop similar traits to solve common adaptive problems, such as wings in birds, bats, and insects, or camera-like eyes in vertebrates and cephalopods. These convergences are strong evidence that certain traits are robust and likely adaptive solutions. However, human-level technological intelligence has evolved only once in the 4 billion-year history of life on Earth, in a single, very recent branch of the tree of life. Despite the existence of other highly intelligent lines, such as corvids and cephalopods, none have developed technology. This strongly suggests that technological intelligence is not an inevitable adaptive solution, but rather a highly contingent and perhaps unique outcome. This point is reinforced by the Bayesian analysis of Earth's chronology, which finds odds of 3-2 in favor of intelligence being a rare outcome of evolution. The argument presented in this study constitutes a cumulative and multifaceted case in favor of the rare Earth hypothesis. Examining the evidence from the galactic to the molecular and evolutionary scales, it becomes clear that the chain of requirements for the existence of complex animal life is extraordinarily long, and each link in that chain is highly improbable. The final probability of a planet passing each of these filters is the product of many small probabilities, resulting in a surprisingly small final figure. We have seen that complex life requires a planet orbiting the right star in the right location within a galaxy of the right type. But this spatial niche, the galactic habitable zone, is further restricted by a temporal requirement. The host galaxy must have an unusually quiet merger history, like that of the Milky Way too. Avoid the periodic sterilization of its periphery by merger-induced bursts of star formation. The planetary system itself must possess a stable architecture, with a guardian gas giant in a circular outer orbit, a configuration that exoplanet surveys suggest is atypical. At the planetary level, the candidate world must possess an unlikely confluence of characteristics: the right size to maintain internal heat, active plate tectonics to regulate the climate, a robust magnetic field to protect its atmosphere, and an anomalously large moon to stabilize its rotational axis. It is plausible that these last three requirements are causally linked to a single low probability event: a giant impact at the right time and geometry. Even if such a miraculous planet existed, life must begin. Abiogenesis faces seemingly insurmountable chemical obstacles in the synthesis of information, polymers, and a probabilistic barrier of astronomical proportions. As demonstrated by theoretical calculations and experimental results, the fact that Mars, the most promising candidate for a second genesis in our system, appears barren reinforces the conclusion that the origin of life is an extremely rare event. Ultimately, if life does arise, its path to intelligence is not a predictable march. The history of life on Earth is a saga of radical contingencies, biological innovations that transformed the planet, mass extinctions that randomly pruned the tree of life, and cosmic catastrophes that opened up unexpected opportunities. Technological intelligence is not a convergent trait toward which evolution naturally tends. It is the unique and fortuitous result of one of countless possible trajectories. The Great Silence, therefore, is not a paradox. It is the expected observational outcome in a universe where complex life is exceptionally rare. We are not silent because we are the first, nor because others are hiding. We are silent because, in all likelihood, we are alone. Our existence is not a testament to a cosmic imperative for life, but to a miraculous confluence of cosmic, geological, and biological fortune. We are the product of a chain of improbabilities, and we may very well be the only example in our galaxy. And this leads us to reinforce everything we have previously maintained. Coincidence? I don't think so.